Hey, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Panic with Friends, where I'm joined by innovative leaders from various industries to talk about how their companies are innovating. I'm Jay Mohan, your host and director of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Harrisburg University. One of the interesting things today is let me give a shout out to some of my friends who are joining from Asia and Europe. So we are truly going global. I think that's the advantage of being virtual. So thanks, guys, for staying up late or getting early or whatever your time zones are. So I'm really excited to hear today from Henry, Rafiq, and Sam, as not only do they have products that are in the early stages, but they are also products that fits right into this post-pandemic world. So healthcare, travel, revenue generation, these are some of the areas that these guys are focused on. So I'm really curious to hear how the impact is in their worlds. So let me start with a quote and then hand over to you guys to do an introduction, to talk about their backgrounds. So starting and growing a business is as much about innovation, drive, and determination of the people behind it as the product they sell. This was Elon Musk. So without further ado, let us hear from the people behind these companies. So Henry, why don't we start with you, then we'll move to Rafiq, and then Sam.
Okay, thank you. So just briefly about myself. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Constance. It's a technology-enabled service that blends social engagement with passive monitoring to help older people live independently. So we help them to stay in their own home, or if they're in a senior community, to stay in independent living. We started the company about 2 years ago, and I started it with my market research intern at a consulting firm that I have in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She was finishing her last year of college, and I had sort of a side project to do some research. We got really excited and decided to start a company. Our focus has shifted. We started with a lot of research that was consumer oriented, because my background is consumer oriented companies. But now we're very focused on B2B, and these last few weeks have helped us to really confirm that focus.
So thanks, Henry. So Rafiq, why don't you give a little bit about your background? And I'm really curious about the travel product, so maybe a little bit about that too.
Sure. Good morning, Jay and Henry and Sam and all the others who are listening. Thanks for this opportunity, Jay, and a good way to interact with in this group. My name is again Rafiq Kotai. I'm founder of Maxian Technologies. We are based in Chicago. We started about 15, 18 years ago as a software development company. And over the years, we have developed software for multiple verticals, including travel, automotive, healthcare, strategy deployment, loyalty programs, and about a dozen different products that we have for other companies and also our own products. And we service more than 100 different companies around the world using these vertical software products. Of course, this pandemic has affected most of our products, even though we spread our bets across the different industries. This pandemic didn't spare anyone. It affected all our product lines in all the verticals. Specifically, obviously, the big effect was on travel. We have 24 companies using our products on the travel market. Of course, their big business is during the summer months, and that all got affected. But we are optimistic. I talk to our customers. They are seeing a lot of cancellations during this time, but 80% of their travelers are willing to move their reservations to travel plans to next year. So only less than 30% canceled. So, which is a good positive signal coming out of this. Yes, it will be tough for the next 2-3 months, but we are hopeful. And usually, after all a setback like this, whether it is economic setback or any type of health scare or any other type of setback, usually travel comes back roaring back. So we experienced it before. So and all the other industries like automotive, we can't because of the incentive that the government is giving. A lot of people are refinancing and buying new vehicles. So things are looking up, even though the current situation looks grim. So that's what we do, Jay.
Thanks, Rafiq. So that's a good introduction. So let me come to Sam. Because your product, to me, is really what a lot of the companies should be looking for, because post-pandemic they want to increase their revenue, and you're kind of positioned in that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jay. Thanks for the opportunity here, and hey there, everyone. My name is Sam Byler. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a marketing software startup called BoostPoint. BoostPoint is the easiest way to get more customers through social media ads. And leveraging social media advertising to do so. And we're mostly focused in the home service industry, home improvement, but also have customers outside of that. So we're a platform that enables these small companies to manage their own social media advertising and get customers through social media ads without going through the learning process of the Facebook Ads Manager for 6 months, or the need to hire a marketing agency, which can be outside of a lot of people's budget. So we're a marketing software where people can easily manage their own social media ads to get more customers. A little bit of history. I spent about 10 years in the home improvement industry myself. I come from an entrepreneurial family. My dad started a manufacturing business in the early 2000s, came up with an invention for the roofing industry. So I spent 5 years as the marketing director there, helped grow that company to a national brand. And then about a year and a half ago, we launched BoostPoint because we saw a need specifically in the home improvement industry for marketing software tailored specifically for them, because it's a very underserved industry segment when it comes to a good marketing stack. There's a lot of CRM software, sales, proposals, measuring software and tech to empower contractors to do that, but very little on the marketing side. So that is the solution that we're trying to bring to our customers.
Thanks, Sam. So coming back to you, Henry, the interesting thing that I know about what you're trying to do is, at least from what I heard about the stats, Harrisburg has the largest, or not Harrisburg, Pennsylvania has the largest aging in place population after Florida. And so given, the pandemic kind of plays right into that, with the elderly population being more vulnerable. So how has your business changed or impacted? Is it growing because of this? I mean, in some ways you feel bad about taking advantage of, but at the same.
Yeah, so it's a great setup. Thank you. In the short term, it's been really hard actually, because our strategy is to work through other companies that have these relationships with seniors. And if you think about it, they've been really busy. So healthcare systems and, for example, senior living communities and those kinds of organizations have really been in a scramble, just trying to manage their day-to-day. And for us, we were pretty far along on a couple of significant relationships at the beginning of this year, and we had a few other people in the pipeline, and those relationships just went cold overnight. Like within about a week and a half of each other, we sort of everything kind of shut down on us, and we were trying to figure it out. So we had an early sign of how important everything was going to be, starting in the first half of February, just based on the planning that was happening at the health systems and at the hospital systems. We had been talking about really large scale implementations that would have, gotten us beyond break even. Now the good news is that Obviously, in the medium term, we expect those relationships to come back, and that our argument for the importance of remote monitoring and support that minimizes in-person touch points, it's even a better story now because everybody's super aware of it. In the last 3 weeks or so, we've started to see some engagement again, and so we're super encouraged. But the size of the initial implementations are much, much smaller. So we're talking to one health system right now about an implementation that's about 10% the size of what we were talking about in early February. So we're still true believers, and we are really committed, but we've had to adjust our timeline, and we've also had to really think hard about, are we going after the right strategy? So a lot of people will see our website or learn about what we're doing. They think it's a great idea. They think we should go direct to consumer. But in our experience early on, the cost of acquiring individual consumers as customers and the amount of time that it would take just didn't make sense relative to the strategy that we've been taking. But we had to question all that in the last 2 or 3 months, and we went through a process of very nearly changing strategy, based on what seems intuitive, that there's a large need, and in the end, through some analysis and just kind of looking at our pipeline opportunities, we doubled down on the strategy that we have, believing that that's going to get us faster to sustainable revenue that really will help the company continue to develop. And in particular, we need those partner relationships to help us complete the product. So anyway, so probably a long answer. So in the short term, we've suffered a little bit. In the long term, we have a lot of optimism and enthusiasm, and it's helped us to really get focused and even more deliberate about how we're doing our business development.
Yeah, so that's a great segue into the follow-up question. So Rafiq, you talked about the travel industry that's kind of comes back or coming back. What do you have any insights that that most of us don't have because your product is used by them? And if so, or what are you hearing out there? And then to kind of Henry's point, have you pivoted or changed something?
Yes,
that you've
as I said, we have verticals in a few other different verticals, software for 5 or 6 different verticals. Travel is one of them, as well as healthcare and automotive. Travel, it all depends on how soon the airlines can get started up so that international travel can come up. So most of the companies are expecting the market to open up by September with air travel back on. But there are going to be some restrictions on how to go about it. Different countries are opening up in different ways or different segments or what they call bubbles to travel. Most of our clients are seeing new reservations or new bookings for 2021. Some of them have written off 2020, but they're still hoping that fourth quarter they can bring in some revenue from reservations. Some of the other products that we have are in different segments. In automotive is showing a lot of prospects. Many companies, many customers are still using our product. The good news is that most of our products are used by the companies on a day-to-day basis, so they cannot really switch off the system even on a downturn. Of course, our revenue will be down, has been down for the last 2-3 months, but we didn't have any cancellations yet. One of the other products that we have is for, as Henry said, strategy deployment. How do you come up with an enterprise-wide strategy? How do you deploy it for a company which has operations worldwide, especially during this time when physical distancing has to be maintained and you cannot travel to those locations? how do you make sure that your company-wide strategy is deployed and managed and monitored and measured on a daily basis? So one of our products called Hoshin Online we have seen some uptick in people asking for that. So, and one of our existing customers, who has operations in about 18 countries in the world, have increased their use of our product so that they can manage their operations on a worldwide basis. Especially on the healthcare, one of our products called JabFab, which is used for real-time patient feedback as well as the provider feedback. As Henry said, we had about 5 or 6 new clients ready to go in February, but then they stopped their deployment because of the current situation. But now they are talking again because their main season main emergency has been they've passed that. So in overall, I see that in the next 2 to 3 months, things will start picking up, or will already have picked up. But it depends on the industry segment, how well they pick up. Especially on travel, I think Q4 and first quarter of 2021, we will be back.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a very optimistic and positive view, and I think that's kind of what a lot of people want to hear and see. And hearing from people who are actually doing this makes it much more clear, or some clarity. So Sam, the interesting thing for me is the small businesses are the ones that had the biggest impact, and they are the ones that struggling. They got some help, but they are the ones who really, and so everything is tied to growing their revenue pretty quickly. And so you have a solution out there, but how do they hear about your solution? And the other part is, if some of your customers, have you seen some of your customers gone under, or are they sustaining, surviving, hungered?
Yeah, and so 80% of our customers are in the home improvement industry, and just like any industry, there was that initial knee-jerk reaction and kind of shock, after each city and county started shutting down, and so everybody felt that, and it was just a lot of uncertainty. What we started really seeing, and different advocates for this, leaders in these industry segments like roofing and landscaping, is advocating companies to just not 100% shut down, to still try to continue to get their message out there and serve to the capacity that they can. And so our most targeted industry is the roofing industry. So for the most part, these companies were still able to provide a service to their customers, but they really had to change and adapt the way they went to market and their selling process, because a lot of it used to be in-home sales, meet the homeowner at the kitchen table and have that face-to-face interaction, and a lot of them had to change their sales process. And so a lot of educating has been going in these industries of how to adapt. And now into it, several months into this, the market has kind of come back, where homeowners are spending more time at home, and they almost realize more things around their home that they'd like to improve because they're just at home more. So I feel like the home improvement industry is a fairly fortunate industry in all of this, to be able to bounce back fairly quickly. But again, the way that these companies acquire customers is changing. A lot of these companies more had a door-to-door sales approach, where they're doing a job in a neighborhood and they're knocking on, the neighbors' doors, letting them know, they can't do that anymore. So a lot of them are trying to find new ways to acquire customers. And we're seeing right now, one of the best solutions for that is digital advertising, social media advertising specifically. Another interesting thing that happened in advertising was a lot of the larger corporations started slashing their ad budgets. And so advertising became more affordable through all of this. Like Facebook ad CPMs actually dropped about 40% about 2-3 weeks into the shutdown. So there's a little bit more opportunity for these small businesses to take advantage of some of these opportunities, to be able to acquire new customers. And we pivoted a little bit as well as far as like how we go about to acquire customers as well, because we're in the middle of raising a capital round as well, and a little more uncertainty around that right now. So we had to look at, okay, the cash on hand that we do have right now, how can we extend our runway, slow the burn, our monthly burn. And so one of the easiest things was to, hey, let's start cut our own advertising. But again, at the same time, we need to still increase acquisition and our growth. So we started looking at ways, okay, well, how can we maybe leverage other revenue streams? Are there other potential niche industries that we can go after that are still, businesses that are still able to provide their services? What are some of those other industries? So we did a little bit of that, and then also just kind of doubled down on some more of our strategic partnerships that we were pursuing, because again, that was a way that, hey, one thing we do still have is time and energy, so we can put that towards creating strategic partnerships that can bring in other customer segments. And then another one that we quickly pivoted and needed to do some work in our product for this, wasn't a whole lot, but we were able to knock it out in a week or two, was enabling marketing agencies as well to use our platform to serve their customers. So there are a few things that we did right away. Jared Neff, my co-founder, and I, we sat down like week one. It's like, okay, in the middle of the uncertainty, is like, what are some of the things that we're going to do? And it's this weird fine line. I'd be interested to hear how you all navigated to this. Is like you want to make the necessary pivots and transitions that you feel you need to take as a business, but you don't want to, I guess, get off track of your main mission. And there's that balance of like, okay, well, we still really believe in our mission, and we feel like that's really what we want to capitalize on, but still in the short term, how are we going to make it through this?
So, in my company, Constance, really, we went through a review of all this, like really trying to be sure that we were focused on the right things. And it's really hard because even when you decide something, you're not always completely sure that that's the right decision, but you have to communicate to your team, what the priorities are. And some of those things, secretly in the back of your mind, you're thinking, ooh, I wonder if that's really the right thing, or it should be this other thing that we said we're not going to do. So there's always a little bit of doubt. But for us, we focused really on two things. One is the social engagement. So our service calls people on the phone. Right now, it's just a phone call. They can have a landline. We've done video. We can do video. Probably in a couple of years, the default is video. But right now, it's just a phone call. And we have this, entertaining kind of experience for people that they look forward to until they call us. They will pick up the phone every single day, and they look forward to it. And that gives us the chance to do all kinds of reporting and track data and things that sometimes you don't get to do when you have a more clinical approach to engaging seniors. The other part, which is directly related to that, is we reduce risk. So for the health system or somebody who's paying the bill, knowing that you have a lot of data that could be predictive, and being able to do the three things that absolutely are proven to reduce the cost of healthcare: social engagement, so people aren't lonely or isolated; care plan adherence, so like nudging people to follow through with taking their medications or whatever they're supposed to do; and then third, the early detection. So somebody's not quite feeling right, we know about it every single day, and we report on it, and we look for trends. So we reviewed everything and said, you know what, the things that we started with, giving a great experience so that people will want to be involved in the program, and then providing the analytical support and the data to somebody who's got to pay the bill, those are exactly the right things to do. And so for us, what it resulted in is innovation, but it took us, in a few different ways. Like a couple of months ago, we were in this kind of spaghetti against the wall phase, It's like, let's try something. Does this seem like a good idea? Is it going to stick? And a couple of things. One, we found that medical device companies, so people who are, providing a very expensive something as part of a medical procedure, have a huge interest in the recovery of those patients. And there's a lot of data that shows that 2/3 of the outcome is not based on anything clinical, nothing medical. It's just how that person is living their life, and we absolutely impact that. So that actually got us into a conversation we probably would not have started, and we're kind of waiting. These are very long-term sort of things. But the other one was, hey, we have a little bit of capacity because we thought we were doing this big project. What can we do with that capacity that creates a relief for the senior communities? So we started an online game show. So we put people on a screen like this. We have a host. We joke around with them. The whole thing is, less than half an hour, but it allows people to have something more than like a flat Zoom call with their family, because everybody's very fatigued of that. But they also don't necessarily, and I know there's some great programming out there in some of these communities, but they don't necessarily love the programming that's happening at their senior community. And so this gives them a little bit of variety and something, and it gives us something to talk to the senior community about, because now we're helping them without asking for anything. It just helps. It's in line with our mission, with our purpose, but it's kind of an indirect way to keep them engaged. So that was a long answer, but absolutely we've had to scramble and think about things. Now we have a few other things that we tried and stopped doing, so I won't even tell you about those.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. So I can see some audience questions. So one of the questions I think is for Rafiq, because I think a lot of people are interested in the whole travel industry. And Jeffrey Roche, who's asked this question, that some tourism agencies are suggesting that the estimation that the industry, it will take 3 years to recover. And it's like there is all these really pessimistic and highly optimistic, and we talk about the Stockdale paradox, or approach in how the leaders are always looked at for clarity, but in these uncertain times you really don't have much clarity. So
yes, as you said, the forecast for the travel industry varies from anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. But what I see from our customers, who are rather big size, for mom and pop shops who are doing travel agencies, it will be tough road for the next year or two until travel really picks up around the world. But for larger companies who have a wide variety of products, which goes to different parts of the world, and as and when they open up, it gives them the more flexible options to send travelers to different locations, and also the type of travel. Is it family travel, river cruises, or ocean cruises, adventure travel? So different segments have different forecasts. But most of our travelers, at least from our point of view, who we provide the software tools for running their operations, and we monitor their bookings on a day-to-day basis to see how things are going. What I see is that in the next 3 to 6 months, or 6 months, the business should pick up. To what extent it will be compared to we had last year, it's anybody's guess. But good news is that it is picking up. And what we have seen from other setbacks earlier, whether it is 9/11, SARS, or financial crisis, there is going to be a dip in travel during that time, but it will come back, roaring back. There is a lot of pent-up demand for travel, whether it is business travel or pleasure. You can see it from the actions of a lot of the states that are happening. So it is going to come back. The question is timing. But we think from talking to our customers that it will be in the next 6 to 12 months, it should come back. And there was another question from somebody about whether VR will replace travel. That was VR has been around for some time, but people who want to travel will travel. I don't think the travel experience can be replaced by a virtual reality.
Response. Well, yeah, that's there's all these ideas around how the world is going to change. So we want to get to that, like your perspective of not just from your industry perspective, but overall how the world will change. But before that, one of the questions that I think the audience would also care about is personally, how has this impacted and what has surprised you about yourself and some of the people that working around you? Because I personally have seen my world, the virtual world, being able to do what I do virtually hasn't changed really much because what I do is I'm able to do it. But I've seen a lot of people who are kind of like completely frozen because they don't know what's going to happen and how to do what they need to do without getting out into the outside. So what has surprised each of you? Let's start with Sam.
Yeah, so at the start of this, we were a team of 4, and we're planning to bring on our 5th team member. And we, being a startup, we just love the energy that comes from working in an office, and that's what we were used to, and we really enjoyed it. At the same time, we had an optional remote work day once a week, so we were set up to be able to work remote. But that was one of the biggest things that I was like, even personally, I wasn't sure how I was going to handle that, because I personally get a lot of energy from relationships and communication and just being around people. And that was, I personally wasn't sure how I was going to handle that. And then we decided to continue the onboarding of our 5th team member in a customer success role. And I wasn't sure how that was going to go, to be honest. It was, trying to onboard someone. Basically, he spent about a week in the office, but I had no previous relationship with this person, and just wasn't sure how that was going to go. But in hindsight, we couldn't be more fortunate just how that transition, how we've been able to make that as a team. I feel like we had the synergy there beforehand and the culture there, and that we've been able to continue that, and everyone's still been able to fire on all cylinders. Onboarding a new person has gone really, really well, and it's because everybody has been proactive in communicating. Instead of walking over to someone's desk and saying, "Hey, I have a question," right now it's just popping up on a Slack call and doing the same thing, just virtually. So I wasn't sure how personally, but I guess it's gone really well, and we've been able to continue to grow in the midst of it.
The interesting thing about startups or founders is it's always about passion and drive, and that's what keeps you going. And when suddenly the world just shuts down.
When I started this, I was in my late 40s. I was going to be turning 50, and I was like, I want to do something good for the world. And I thought I had a little bit of runway. I had a little bit of savings. I had a pretty good network, and I had never done something like this. Actually, I'd been involved with a couple of startups a long time ago, but I was never like the guy, right? So I went into this thing thinking, okay, well, I'll try it. If I fail, no problem. And I had a limit, like how deep I was going to go before I would, kind of pull the plug and say, okay, it didn't work. So I'm a lot deeper than that now. And so I think one of the things that surprised me is, as I kind of reflected on everything that we had learned about the problem that we're trying to solve, about the people that we're working for, and the opportunity in this evolving market, I just got even more committed, and with that came a bigger financial commitment into the company, and also basically, like I'm not really making any money, and it's been a while, longer than I would have liked. So I think one thing, if I reflect back on what happened versus what I was thinking like 2.5 years ago, we were just going to start this thing. It's like I'm a lot deeper in personally, but a lot more, or at least as enthusiastic as I've ever been. So I have, I guess, strong conviction that we're on the right track. It's just going to take a lot longer than we thought. Second thing is, I was pretty adamant about our team working in what we call an operations center. So we have 3 people that we call Constance family coordinators. So we have 3 of them right now. What they do is they're the ones who call on the phone. They fill out, we have a lot of software, and they fill out all these things. We create all these digital reports. So we have a very tight culture. There's a couple of other people that are involved in the mix there, including a geriatric social worker. So it's a team. They're constantly talking to each other. It's very collaborative. People would ask us, like investors would say, like, "Oh, is it going to be, people going to work from home, because you don't want to have, I was like, no, like the culture and the environment is super important. There's no way we're gonna have these little kind of mini call centers, and they're going to have, they're going to have 18 people, 3 teams of 6. We had it all worked out. We had benchmarked all these things. We were very clear. We knew the economics of it and everything. Now everybody's working from home, and it's working great. So I think we had to have this experience to sort of prove to me that we could do it that way. Now, I don't think we want to start people like that. So we still would want to have this in-person experience as we're onboarding people and getting them up to speed. But I'm a lot more flexible in my thinking about the ability for that role to be completely remote. So those are 2 things.
So, Rafiq, I know that you have more of an international spread because you have people working, in Asia and, other places, and you have customers all over. What surprised you, and how did you change?
Yes, being a software company and being in the software business, remote working comes with the territory. We have been using remote work with our customers, with our development team over the last 10-15 years. So there's not much of a change from a remote working point of view, but we do. But we have an office where people come and work on it on the different products. So that has changed. So some part of the team members are now working from remotely. So the processes has to be changed to fit that model. We still have to maintain the production level quality and support. So from our operational point of view, not much of a change. But from a sales and marketing point of view, as Sam said earlier, we have to have a one-on-one personal relationship with our customers. So over the last 10-15 years, we have built up what I call customer relationship capital. And that's what we are spending for the last 2-3 months. And that's what enabled us to work 3 months without seeing them. But them from personal relationship that we have built up over the years. But how long you can keep that without having that one-on-one meeting and in-person meeting, that each company and each division and each department and each role will be different. For developers or programmers, it can continue. But from the sales and marketing point of view, you still need to have a one-on-one in-person contact with your customers. You have some more runway, but I think sooner than later, you still have to go and meet the customers, see them eye to eye. Zoom calls can only do so much in terms of maintaining and continuing the relationship with customers.
So the startup world is, Sam, you briefly mentioned about this, the investment opportunities, that kind of pauses. I have this quote from Bill Gates, which he says, in this business, by the time you realize you are in trouble, it's too late to save yourselves. So unless you are running scared all the time, you're gone. So, which is true. I mean, as a, somebody who started a company of myself, it's a roller coaster, and, pandemic or not, you're always running scared, and you're trying to, figure out what's the next, how do you pivot, where is the customer? And one of the terms that Rafiq used kind of was interesting, the customer capital that you have saved. So, for a company that's in the early stages, how do you, what's the innovations you are doing right now to reach out to your customers? And also the investment side you brought up, because that's an interesting one that maybe we have a few investors listening in, or somebody who is thinking about investment. I'm curious to hear what your take is, Sam, and also, I'll come to
So on the first thing there, kind of on the customer side, like cultivate, we don't. It's not like we're a brand with 5-10 years of a track record that we're able to stand on. So what we did, we just became super obsessed with customer results, like the right here, right now, on the product side, but then also on the customer and sales side. It's like, okay, the easiest way to get a new customer is with proof of an existing customer. So we just became super obsessed with the results that we're getting for our current clients that were already paying us. And again, it's easier to retain a client than it is to go get a new client as well. So that was like one of the things we did on the customer side, is just be super obsessed with the results that we're getting for our current customers. And then on the capital raising side, I mean, we were deep in conversations with several groups, personal and private investors as well. And at the beginning, that kind of went a little cold the first couple weeks. And as well as a founder, it's important to know where to put your energy as well, because you only have a certain amount of capacity. So I knew that, okay, especially the first 2 weeks into this, like, it's not going to make sense making dozens of calls to potential investors when they're just trying to figure out where the market is at and all of that. So personally, I just took a huge shift to spending more time with our customers, because I knew like that was a relationship like that we can still maintain and it makes sense pursuing. But what I started finding is, as things started to maybe stabilize a little bit, or able to realize how far down things were going to go, I guess. Some of those conversations just started coming back again as far as with potential investors. So I did start to be more proactive again, in the following weeks after that. And almost surprisingly, I was, those conversations can still happen. There's investors that are still looking for new opportunity because some other opportunities maybe that they need to liquidate, or currently.
So Sam, I think we lost you for a second. So I'll come to you, Henry. The same question, because one of the things
can't see the returns,
I've been hearing, I've been talking to a lot of startup founders, CEOs around.
To me, right now,
the
biggest thing is if you can tell a story of how you're producing results for your customers. That is the strongest thing right now that you can. The story that you can tell as a startup is if you can say, "Hey, we're producing this for our customers."
So what I was saying was, I've been hearing when I talk to some of the other founders, a large number, which I belong to a network which has about 300 or so startup CEOs in different stages. We keep hearing about different approaches. Somebody moving from the business model from a purely subscription to a freemium model. Somebody else going and doing what's called a bartering. So if the investors are not really putting in money, you're trying to trade your services for somebody else's that you need, partnering on accounting, or people are getting really creative out there. What are you doing, or what are you?
Okay, you can hear me Even at the end of last year, we had decided that it would be really important to land a couple of these bigger, kind of more like institutional accounts before we would go for our seed funding. What we had done up until that point is what we would consider like a pre-seed convertible note. And we had done that in different tranches. And we had the goal to do more, but we weren't going to be in a hurry to do it because we didn't want to, seem like we needed it, which is what you're always trying to do when you're raising money. But fortunately, we had a couple of investors that had shown up, a couple of different groups, but we had de-emphasized that fundraising process. So we weren't like actively out. We didn't have updated, everything. We just had the same deck that we had been using for 9 months, basically. And we were trying to raise another $300,000 to make a total of $1 million. Now, we had received funding from Ben Franklin Technology Partners, so they had been, with us, for the previous few months. We got $100,000 from them in this cycle from last year. So what happened was those relationships, those conversations that we had with the customers went away. So we got really more interested in, hey, can we get some more, cash in just so we don't have to radically change our plans? And then those investors who are all individuals also just went away because, if you remember, like third week of February, the stock market started going crazy. And these are people who, probably have a fair amount of capacity, but they're not going to make any big decisions until they understand their whole portfolio. And so everything kind of went cold on us. What we did is, kind of really look at what we're doing, decide, what we were going to focus on. So we trimmed, our spending. And then I personally like sort of committed that, we're not going to be in a hurry. We're going to get done the things that we need to get done. We still have these customer opportunities. They're just going to be a lot smaller. Let's get that done, and then we'll go back to our original plan, which was, we were thinking that this summer we would go for a seed round. This is going back to like January, February, thinking that this summer we would go out with some, nice customer references, like bigger, like paid, customer references, and do a priced equity round with kind of maybe more institutional kind of seed stage. So we still have that plan. I mean, I don't know if it'll happen this year, but we still have the plan that's the next step for us. We're just, not like in a super hurry. Probably in the next couple of months, we'll start to warm up some of those relationships again and try to get meetings, but we're not sure what the timing of that is. We're not, if somebody showed up and wanted to give us money, we would absolutely talk to them. But as I think Sam was saying, like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy. And so you want to do it in a batch. You want to treat, you want to have, 20 or 50 meetings using the same deck, and an updated model where everything is more or less the same, rather than these one-offs where it isn't very efficient and it's distracting you. So anyway, long answer for you.
No, that's great because we are coming towards the end of the show. We have, probably minutes for one question more. But one of the things, I think, an audience question, which I think is kind of a great kind of the last part of the conversation. Kelly Logan's question, which I think is really an interesting one and very important one, given that we are in this virtual world. So I'll start with you, Rafiq, because you have these customers spread out. And you talked about the customer capital that you have collected. Have you seen customers more interested?
We haven't seen any change in terms of being able to reach the customers, whether through email or phone call or in person or video. But one thing we have noticed is that the world is now accustomed to a video call. So having a video call with a company who has not done it before is no now. Earlier, you used to have all the things set up. You have to schedule it, but it's much easier now. anybody and everybody is now on Zoom calls. So it's a second nature for them. So, and most of the people are working from home. So that allows us to have these kind of conversations over the video. But we have been doing this for several years on a GoToMeeting or a web-based call, so that hasn't changed much in terms of marketing. But one thing that we have noticed is that in the last 2-3 months, as I said, everybody's accustomed to video calls. And this allows us to look at a couple of new areas for product development, especially for remote health, because people are used to being, or to discussing things on a video call. So it opens up new opportunities. So as somebody said, each crisis gives also raises new opportunities. So we are looking at a couple of different ways to add new product lines into our mix, especially in the telemedicine area. So the pandemic or the situation has helped us address some of the new market that's evolving.
So Sam, that same question, Kelly, it's because it's an interest. So when you probably started the business, you kind of looked at central PA or Pennsylvania as the market where you are looking at. But now, the world is your market. And can you use some of these virtual approaches to reach out to somebody in New York or, I don't know, West Coast, California, and, have this conversation with a potential customer?
Yeah, so the answer to that would be yeah. Like we've been able to leverage it, and it's worked really well. I mean, even before this, we did have kind of a natural approach to customer acquisition. We were advertising nationally through digital marketing, kind of drinking our own Kool-Aid for social media advertising. What we have seen is like contractors, previously it was a little hard to get them on a Zoom call for a product demo or something like that, where people are just a little more accustomed to that. Again, it's becoming more second nature. People have Zoom downloaded on their computer or on their phone, so it's a little bit easier to get people on a Zoom call. But I've been there's nothing like a face-to-face meeting. Nothing will ever replace that. But I have been it's been nice to see that you can still accomplish a lot of the same things that you were able to through a virtual meeting. Where we've hired, based on completely virtual meetings, hiring an intern over the summer, have multiple conversations going with investors right now that will most likely invest in our current round that I've never met before. And it's just been these calls, where before it would have been a drive to maybe New Jersey or something like that to actually have a face-to-face meeting. So it's been good to see that people have been willing to adapt, whether it's customers or investors, and still be able to put in the effort and with these type of meetings and adapt.
So, Henry, we have just a couple of minutes. I want to hear from you. Like, has your
about that you trained me well. So we aren't geographically constrained. So we have served people all around the U.S. when we were, just picking up individual accounts as part of our, MVP and kind of beta. But when we started deliberately going after accounts, we did focus on kind of a driving range area, which is a huge population, and there are a lot. So I would say that is still the emphasis for us. But we do have one active large opportunity in the Southwest. And it's actually the biggest opportunity. But it's somebody that we met that is from here who happens to be the chief operating officer at a big health system down there. So I think we're still focused on like where we can have a reputation advantage. We have a very senior geriatric social worker with, a master's degree from, University of Pennsylvania and who's very networked in a certain circle of people. And then I also have a network kind of in us. And so usually for the people that we're going after, knowing several people that they know is helpful to get that first meeting. What we typically have been doing is having the initial meeting as a, kind of like a demo or kind of initial web meeting, and then doing it again with a group of their colleagues. So generally we're going to one person, and we were sort of doing that mostly anyway before, and then it's the second meeting that would have been in person with maybe, 6 or 10 people. That meeting is now also happening online.
So thank you, Henry, Rafiq, and Zam, for a great conversation. I certainly had fun, and hope the audience too had some fun learning about these cool companies. And the interesting thing for me is, we will record this and make it available through the social media. So hopefully some of the investor networks that I belong to would hear about some of these things and would be interested in connecting. And so I'll see you all in the next episode. For the audience, and send us your feedback, good or bad, at cie@harrisburgu.edu. And I told this to the previous panelist. At some point, once we are past this, maybe a few months from now, I would love to get all of you back, follow up